Welcome to a special virtual edition of the Skeptics track at Dragoncon. And now, let's start the show.
Hello and welcome to the Skeptic Track live streaming for Dragoncon 2020. Thank you for joining us. We have the science and fiction comedy show with Ian Harris and Leighann Lord. Take it away.
Welcome, everybody, to the science and fiction comedy show from virtual Dragoncon. I'm Ian Harris. I'm here with my partner in nerd crime, Leighann Lord. Hey, Leighann.
Hey, Ian.
And so we've got a couple guests here. We can't do our normal show, obviously. There's no crowd here. We're in our respective living rooms or offices or whatever. And we can't do stand-up. We really can't wait till 2021 to do stand-up again in front of all of you. So we thought we'd bring a different kind of a show, a little podcast, some comics, some nerds, some whatever. We're fans. We're whatever we are, I guess. I don't know exactly what we are, but we fit with Dragoncon. How many years, Leighann, introduce yourself, and how many years have you been at Dragoncon?
That would be really good.
Hey, everybody. I am Leighann Lord. I think this was going to be either my 5th or 6th year at the con. It's always an amazing weekend for me. I call it Nerd Christmas, Nerd Nirvana. You know, it's big tent nerdy. It's all of those things. And it was always extra special for me because it always fell on my birthday weekend, which was Labor Day weekend. So it was just the best of everything.
Taking over the world.
So DragonCon 2021 and DragonCon 2020, this piece of it that we can do.
Yes. So I'm going to go through. Let's introduce yourselves. Let everybody know who you are and what you do, because some of the DragonCon people, many of them hopefully know us, especially from Skeptrack and Science Track, because this is my 5th or 6th year as well. So hopefully they know us. But we've got a couple of guests here, comedians, and with nerd cred. So let's just start. Di, go ahead. You introduce yourself first, and then we'll go to Ron after that.
Thank you so much. I, as a nerd, am never used to being included in anything. So this is fantastic. I appreciate it. As you can see from my attire, which I picked out myself, which is already wrong. Nerds shouldn't pick out their own attire. I am a big fan of small droids because I am 5 feet tall and I make a lot of beeping noises. What makes me nerdy is I thought I was going to be a scientist or an engineer. I started at MIT. I stayed there. And then I became a comedian, which is completely illogical. But there is a science and a math to being funny. And I'm excited to be accepted by you all. Just to clarify, I'm not a geek. I am a hardcore nerd.
Sweet. All right. And Ron, what about you?
I am a nerd and a geek. I don't even know.
Let the fight begin.
If you're watching this on video, you can see all the stuff in the background. This is my little studio I made because I do Nerd Goat podcast with my buddy Ed Greer from Screen Junkies. And basically each week we break down people's favorite fictional character of all time. And we make it funny. Like we did Knight Rider one time, Kit, the actual car. And you know, we just go to weird spots. We talk about Spider-Man. We talk about Sherlock Holmes, and basically how fictional characters can be in I don't know, a looking glass into the type of person you are. I did nerd comedy on accident like 12 years ago because I just wrote jokes about Spider-Man because I cared about it. and then all of a sudden people started liking nerds and were like, hey, you want to come over here and do nerd specific comedy? And I was like, I'm sorry, what did you just say to me? Have you been trying to pull from my dreams for my whole life, stand up and just actually be honest about the things that I love? That's crazy. So yeah, now I'm a semi-professional nerd.
And it's funny because I know Leighann and I have talked about this, and I was working on a joke about it last time. Actually, Ron and I did some gigs in December before the world went insane and has closed down. But we the last shows I think I did actually was with Ron, and I was talking about how, and I'm on one hand, I'm so incredibly excited, and I love the fact that nerd culture is cool, because it gives us opportunities. We have an audience. We can go do Dragoncon, and there's 80,000 people, and we can sell, have an entire auditorium come to see us do comedy because they want to see this stuff. And on the other hand, it's tiring when everything is nerd and people who aren't nerds. When you're like, okay, when it becomes the Madison Avenue marketing, and it's like, I'm a nerd, and you're like, no, you have glasses. That doesn't mean anything.
Yeah. I do feel like nerd culture has become very commercialized. It's hip, it's cool. Where were you when it counted? Where were you when it got you beat up in school? Where were you when you had the lunchbox that nobody else had and nobody thought it was cool? And no, you didn't know it was going to be a collector's item. So I think I put in my nerd time, and I want to walk up to people and go, you're welcome. Like, you have no idea what it means to be out, to be nerdy, to be black and nerdy. Oh my goodness. That is that's a whole nother podcast. But I did want to, I'm asking everybody this question, but Daya, you in particular, because I was wondering, do you guys think there's a correlation between people who are skeptical and people who are sciencey and people who are smart? They seem to overwhelmingly embrace science fiction. Or maybe it's just the places that I'm hanging out. Like, those are the folks that get the jokes about Star Wars and Star Trek. And they also have degrees in science. Is there something about that? Is that, I guess my question is there anything unusual about that, or is that pretty common?
Well, right now, when skepticism is high about science, I want to make sure that we put ourselves in the right camp. We are skeptical of the world and information until we make decisions for ourselves. But there's a whole other camp that's skeptical about Anthony Fauci, or they're skeptical around masks, or they think wearing a mask. Did you see that one congressman? He's like, my mask was shifting around my face and I got the COVID. And I'm like, that's not how it works. You don't get the COVID from the mask on your, like, you probably already had it and you protected someone. So there's a lot of skepticism right now about the things that I think are very near and dear my heart. I don't want those skeptics in my camp. So I do think that those people are skeptical for other reasons. They're skeptical because they're like, I'm an American. I want to do my way. And I grew up in Alabama, so I'm allowed to do that accent. I lived there from 5th grade through 12th grade. So it's not punching down. It's basically making fun of everyone who bullied me in school.
Yeah, I'm allowed to do that accent because I have family members who probably have that accent.
And let me clarify too. So when Leighann and I talk about skepticism, we are those people. The problem with the word skepticism is that people use it when we mean skepticism. We're talking what they call scientific skepticism, which that, but clarifying for other people who don't know. A lot of times people go, "Oh, you're a skeptic. You don't believe anything." It's like, no, that would be a cynic.
Yes.
Or when someone says, "Oh, I'm skeptical of that," no, you're questioning that, and that's okay to question.
Yeah.
But when we come up with when you're using, logic, reason, critical thinking skills, you're looking at mounds of evidence to determine what is correct and saying, I don't know until the answers are in or until the wealth of evidence is in. That's what skepticism as a movement is. But it sucks because I hear people use it. Climate change was one. Everyone kept calling them climate skeptics. It's like, they're not skeptics. Right. They're morons. Saying, I'm skeptical of climate change. Well, then you're stupid. I don't know what to tell you, because there's no, where does the skepticism come from? Like, you just question it because Fox News told you. It's insane.
I like to think about it as all the stuff that I learned about the scientific method to create a hypothesis, to gather data, to think through the problem. You're never going to have the perfect data, and to come to some kind of conclusion. Critical thinking and being able to walk through a process of how you think is very useful in life. It's useful when we're in the middle of a pandemic. It's useful to interrogate yourself around things like racism. Like, why is this happening? Okay, let's think about this. So I do like the idea of saying that critical thinking and skeptical thinking is a life skill. It's not just for nerds.
Yes. Ron, what you were going to say too?
Well, I think it comes down to this, and that's that I know for a fact that I am not the smartest person in the world, but I trust the smartest people in the world. Like, I think that that's a big deal. I think that there is a part of intelligence that lets you be able to go, okay, there are people who are experts in things. Like, let's just take a simple thing. A mechanic is an expert at your vehicle. Like, I might not take love advice from a mechanic, although maybe I would. Maybe he's great with love. I don't know. But what I'm saying is I will definitely take advice on how to take care of my vehicle or let him fix it correctly because he's the guy who's the professional at it. And it's like, and it's like every person thinks that they're smarter than the smart people. And that's when you have to know you're stupid.
There's actually a name for that, and I can't remember what that is, but most of us, yes, we think we're smarter than we really are, and it's a very frightening thing when you go, you know what, I don't know.
Right.
Well, you know, when you're in your 20s, you think you know everything, and I did.
Oh, that's different.
I literally called myself a genius multiple times with literally no college education.
I think,
at the time.
and I know this sounds weird, but I give 17-year-olds to about 25-year-olds a pass. Because that is a special time in your life when you are invincible, you are brilliant, you know everything. You know, how did your parents even survive without you? I mean, it's a special time in your life. And
you're probably drunk a lot, which means you're
probably drunk a lot. There's a lot going on. And so I look at them and go, aw, because it's not going to last. Real life's going to hit you in the head and pretty quickly, and you're going to wish somebody told you what to do because now you have no idea. So it's a special, sweet time of life. You know,
it's funny. I mean, we talk about going back to what Dia was saying too, with people being skeptical of stuff. I find this right now. We see it so much. I'm sure a lot of it has to do with. I think we've always had it, but now with social media, we see it more. And I think with people's religion going away, they haven't changed the way of thinking that got them to fundamentalist Christianity or whatever, but they've dropped that and they've need something else to fill that gap. And what we're seeing now is a ton of crazy conspiracy. Like, we've always had conspiracy, but we're seeing crazy conspiracies. And I think what I've noticed from a lot of these people that are really into the conspiracies is they're kind of on the skeptical track, in the sense that they're thinking of the right kind of way, but they don't have the tools. They don't know necessarily how to critically think. They don't know what good evidence is. They don't know what's a reputable medical journal and what is a blog. They don't know the difference. So they're like, question everything. And you're like, cool, great, question it. Ask the question. But when I give you the answer, you can't, and give you piles of evidence, you can't question where the evidence and then question the sort and question everything to where all you're doing is question mongering. If your answer to everything is, oh, so you believe facts? Like, I mean, what can we do at that point? And you're seeing it with, like, the people think Bill Gates is trying to, first off, a guy who is a software engineer who could probably, I think there is a Microsoft phone. I think you could probably, if he wanted to chip us, I think it'd be a lot easier for him to do it electronically with the thing we carry in our pocket that tells us where we are all the time, rather than him inventing a virus so that he could then come up with a pharmaceutical company that he doesn't own, so he could come up with the vaccine so that he could put a chip. It's like, and that's something that real human beings think is true.
But you understand, I mean, I think at the base of this, for a lot of people, is fear. You know, and that's where the scientific skeptical community is way more, they're way more comfortable with going, we don't know, let's investigate. Whereas, you know, a lot of the population goes, we don't know, ergo God. Like, they want an answer. They want to fill in really fast, you know, subset Jesus. Like I need an answer. I need to be able to sleep at night. And if you think about it, and I don't know when people will be watching this, but hopefully it will still be timely. You know, when you talk about the development of a vaccine, I think people want the Twitter version of that without even understanding the history. Like, I don't think you need to know how a vaccine is made, but if you look at the history of what it takes, we're not going to have it by Tuesday, everybody. But I think that's what our society, our culture, the speed at which we get things has given us a false sense of how fast things really actually happen or how long things actually take, which is probably why relationships fail. Like, why aren't we in love? We've been dating, we had 3 dates. What's happening? So it changes our attention span, and then we get crazy, we get fearful, and then conspiracy theory.
When it comes to politics, facts tend to lean left. So if you go to college and you're learning facts, most people who are more educated, I mean, look at big cities. Why is it that every big city, even you can go to a big city in Alabama and it'll be blue? Okay, not to get super political, but why is that? Partly because people usually, there's better jobs, there's colleges, and because there are different types of people. You find people of all different races and ethnicities and religions and sexual orientation and all this sort of stuff. And when you know people that are different than yourself, you realize, oh, they're just like me too. Or, oh, I care for this person. There's a trans person in my class and I'm not scared of them anymore. Like, when you live in a town of 15 people who look and think just like you, everything is scary. And fear really controls a lot of this stuff. And I think the conspiracy theories, like we said, are based on fear. And a lot of this idea that you go to college, you're going to meet scary people and you're going to hear scary ideas. And I think that's where a lot of it comes from.
I thought that was the point of college.
It is.
Aside from the parties. I mean, I will say that college for me, because I went to Catholic school, it was a very, very insular upbringing, Catholic grammar school, Catholic high school. And then I went to college, went to public college, and it was like, wow, look at all these people. And you believe what? And you believe what? Are you serious? And so when I started meeting people of different religions, I'm like, oh, they can't all be right. That's not how this works. And then I was very, very lucky because you can still go to an insular college where it's still a very tiny bubble. I went here in New York City, and because it was so diverse, I felt like I went to college at the United Nations. Like, there were just so many people from so many different backgrounds. I guess it goes back to that Chris Rock joke. You couldn't pick somebody to hate. It was just too many. It was too many people, And so when you have that exposure, you start to get comfortable. Like, I didn't care who was throwing a party. It was a Chinese club. Okay, I'm going because their DJ's hot. But you have to almost have those opportunities. And I think the younger you have them, the better. I'm not saying that old folks can't change, but I find as I get older, I have to be very careful of where I might get stuck in my thinking or set in my ways. And it's an effort, whereas when you're young, it's like, a little bit more plasticity in the mind, So maybe that's why some folk are anti-college, because their kids come home and it's challenging what the parents and grandparents taught them. But that's our job when we're kids.
Yeah, as a nerd, as a kid, people used to yell at me for reading. In class, I would get done with homework, and then I'd read a book I wanted to read, and people were like, what are you doing? What are you doing? They're so mad at me, and they were like, you stupid nerd. It's like, I'm
stupid reader?
Not stupid.
That still happens in comedy. Like, I used to when I didn't get cell phone reception and I'd have to be in the green room and I didn't want to talk to all the bros, I would bring a literal magazine or a book with me and read. And one time I was opening for Maz Jobrani and he goes, what are you doing? And I was like, I'm reading The Economist. And he goes, you're amazing. And then he talked about it on stage. He goes, do you know my opening act was reading The Economist? And then after that, he kept asking me to open for him, and now we're good friends. So sometimes it's good signaling value. If you're like, look at me, I have The Economist, you get booked by smart people. But if you read The Economist and it's, I don't know, let's say Chris D'Elia, Jeff Ross, Brian Callen, they're not going to see The Economist. They're just going to say, show me your tits. That's the difference between nerds and not.
You're an adult. You're an adult. They're not going to ask to see your boobs at all.
Right,
that was terrible.
I'm too old. I'm too old.
Can I just say that for the future, tattoo The Economist on your tits. So when you do, they're forced to read. It's a win-win.
Ian,
we connected before on so many levels, and it's weird for me to tell people The Economist is my favorite magazine, because it just really breaks it down. It's so good. And most people like can't even get past the daily news. That's an effort.
I like it. And I think Ian, that's actually really funny because someone suggested recently that I start an OnlyFans and that I use it to like lure in people, and then when they get in, I teach them math and science.
That's hilarious.
That is great. I wish you would do that.
I'm not gonna say that's not a bad idea.
You know, I do have a question though we're talking about science fiction, talking about reading. What books would you say? With two-part question. What do you think science fiction books, movies, whatever the movies come from books, but that has accurately predicted the future, and or do you think that we follow things that we read and make them so? Like if we are reading a book and we go, it would be great to be able to beam each other up. Do we work toward that science? Or were they just way ahead of their times? I've always wondered, it's a chicken and egg situation. But which ones do you think, aside from 1984, what do you think is happened now that you said, oh, that was completely science fiction 40, 50 years ago? And
I want someone else to jump in and answer the question, but Ian, I just like that you said make it so, because that was very appropriate for this question.
I try.
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, people have talked about this, written books about this, you know, spoken openly about how much Star Trek influenced them, you know, from, you know, the communicator to the flip phone, you know, from the pads that you saw them using, not so much in Next Generation, but definitely in Voyager. We go from that to the iPad. You know, we can see these correlations, or even the people that grow up to be scientists or the people that grow up to be astronauts. You know, it really does. You know, I'm not going to say Star Wars doesn't have an influence, but there's definitely a track record for Star Trek. You know, sliding doors. Anybody? Sliding doors that open that you don't have to touch. Now I don't know about the transporter. I don't know if I want you just showing up on my doorstep at a moment's notice. Like, I think you still need an invitation.
Look, I think that it's a combo of the two, but I also think that it might be a little bit of just the okay, this is something I've always tried to explain, like the difference between, say, Einstein and then like a dude you know who is good at math. So like Einstein wasn't just good at math or understanding science. He was also creative. So his creativity is what helped put him a step over other scientific people. Because there has to be a part of your brain that goes, what if gravity is just like, you know, something big pressing on time? That is bananas. That is a weird, creative thought that you have to then actually go, okay, well, there's math that supports this, and find the math that you are capable of doing on top of having this weird thought. So I think there has to be a link between science fiction and real science, just because there has to be a bit of creativity within good science to come up with ideas. You know, the idea that someone thought they could send a signal through the air.
Well, I think that's why it's combined. It's called the arts and sciences. You know, like that's why those things are put together, because science by itself, science is great. Arts by themselves, the arts are pretty cool. You do arts and sciences, woo, what? And now we made the wheel. Now we got fire. Now we're moving forward. You know, I'll throw Carl Sagan. I'll see your Einstein and raise you a Carl Sagan.
Yes.
You know, these are amazing people. I wish we made more of them. You know, instead of making fun of them when they're reading, when their work is done in the classroom.
and how many times have you, you know, on the other end of that, most, and I'm not saying everyone who's a musician or a comedian is super smart or brilliant or whatever, but the percentage of really good artists, when you sit and talk to them, a lot of times they're troubled and they have their you know, brain going too much. I'm sure we've all got some of that. Yeah. But almost every other person I've met, comedians that I think are geniusly funny, happen to be really smart. And even if they're uneducated, you know, they didn't go, their level of thinking and critical thinking is usually quite different from other people I know. And that's across the board in artists. I find like so many good artists, they have something else. There's a science to their thinking even. You know what I mean?
Right.
It's like there's just so many intelligent people that are also artists. And there's probably so many scientists that are super creative. There's definitely a crossover, and I think it's just a matter of which way you take it, which way you take how your brain works. Do you take it the art way, or to be an artist, or do you take it to being a scientist, or you know? And I think it's the same brain.
That's a good theory.
But we also have to remember that there are some incredibly talented, incredibly smart, incredibly incredible people at what they do that are horrible humans. Unfortunately, those don't always go together. I know scientists that I'm like, I could hear this guy talk about physics forever and be blown away, and like, but I probably wouldn't let him watch my kid. You know what I mean? Like, and it's hard to separate those things. And I have a podcast with Ty Barnett, another comedian, and we talk about this stuff all the time with, it's so hard when you have these people nowadays you're finding out are horrible people, and you're like, oh, but they're great at what they do. Can I listen to that music? Can I ever watch Bill Cosby again and go, wow, he was a good comedian? If you think Bill Cosby's a good comedian, I'm not making a judgment on him either way. But can I watch Bill Cosby as a comedian and separate him from his horrible, shitty human that he is? That is a really, and I don't want to give him money, but it's like, I also don't go, well, now he's not a good comic. Now that guy can't sing. No, he can still sing. Whether I choose to patronize it, or give them money, is a completely different thing, though. It's hard to separate.
Megadeth, as a kid, I was a big fan of Megadeth. And then he turns out he is like a guy who believes in crisis actors.
No.
And
I'm sorry, what? He's what?
He came out when Sandy Hook happened and went on in Japan. He came up on stage and was like, it was all set up. We know this isn't real. Like all this crazy stuff.
No.
And it was like, and look, that guy has a lot of problems. I'm not going to, like he's been an alcoholic and a druggie and a bunch of things, and he's been touring since he was like 17 years old, and you definitely have a different life when you've been famous from the time you were like a baby, but like I can't support that. Like I can't give that guy money, but I do still listen to Megadeth before I go do shit.
Well,
like
you can also acknowledge his talent.
Yeah.
And that's where it's hard, because we don't want to give anybody any credence or any positive accolades when we know they're shitty people. Like it's hard. And that's what really pisses me off, is aside from their crimes against humanity they do, I'm like, now I have to either hate you or defend you, and I don't want to do either.
I'm always afraid when somebody's trending on Twitter. I'm like, oh my God, is it political? Did they die? Was there a sexual, charge? And I'm like, I'm really hoping they're dead. Because the other two, you know what I mean? Because the other two now requires me to make an assessment, not just mourn, but I'm like, okay, oh my gosh, what do they do? Oh my gosh, did I like this person? And now I got to go through all these gyrations that you just said. And it does become difficult. Like, you're trying to balance cancel culture, is that what we're calling it now, with forgiveness culture. At what point do we acknowledge, people's humanity and have compassion? I guess it depends on the crime, right, or their level of sorriness. I don't know.
Can they change?
Yeah, and their age. Like, I don't know. When a 45-year-old dude is racist, you go, "Oh, that guy's a racist person." I don't see a lot of change for 45-year-olds who are racist, but like a 21-year-old, I don't think that's okay by any stretch of the imagination. But a 21-year-old can learn a little bit. Like, they can look at their mistake and then be 39 years later, and I can be like, oh, okay. Because my issue with this stuff is, are we pulling someone's worst tweet? Because look, When I was
Right.
19 years old, I went to a party, and I'm into martial arts a little bit, like Ian is. Ian's really into it. I was into it a little bit. And this guy that I kind of vaguely knew from high school was showing me some moves, and I was like, oh, man, you're really tough for a gay guy. First off,
Oh my God.
gay people are all types of people. Some
Yeah.
of them are tough, some of them are not.
Yeah.
First off.
Yeah.
Secondly, he was not gay. I just thought he was gay because he was a little bit feminine. But I was 19 years old. There wasn't any hate in my heart. There was just ignorance. And so he took me aside and was like, bro, first off, not gay. Second, even if I was, why wouldn't I be tough?
Yeah.
And I was like, huh, that is a great question. So what I'm saying is, if you can be the type of person that can be stupid like that, but then learn from it and get better as a person. Like, obviously, I wasn't like saying any slurs or anything like that, but it was still ignorant and it was obviously dumb. But I'm not that type of person anymore. It took me, a conversation.
Yeah.
Just like Ian said, it took being around an actual type of person who was like willing to talk to me and say, instead of being like, what an idiot, and just walking away from me, he was like,
Which he
let's have a
easily
conversation.
could have done.
Absolutely. And I would have stayed ignorant for a while because I wouldn't have
Well,
thought it was
I
a
mean,
big deal.
Several things had to happen there. You had to say what you said. He had to feel comfortable pulling you to the side. I call that the 2-finger tap on your shoulder. And then you had to be open enough to go, a lot had to happen there in order for there to be a positive outcome. I will challenge you on the age, though. If our average age that we live to is 80,
Yeah.
we get a little longer to make some mistakes. Because age don't
Fair
mean you're
enough.
smart.
That's true. That's
It
true.
depends on your experiences, how you're processing. Are you continuing to learn and grow as a person? There's a lot going on there. Now, is there less patience for people over 30? Yeah, because you look at, come on,
Yeah, come on.
you're supposed to have it together. But how many people do you know who are supposed to, who don't? And
Wow.
better, where do you not have it together?
Well,
Do you know what I mean? That's where I get my compassion. Like, you know what? I don't know. Maybe somebody else doesn't know either.
Look, you guys, I'm 43 and I live with roommates. So admittedly it's a house, but I can't throw any stones in this super, super, super glass house.
Ron, what you're saying, I'm going to elevate that to say you're already doing the smart thing that they're doing in European countries. You're communal living, which is where Americans should be going.
Yeah, I'll
very
take that.
nice. Love it.
I mean,
I know how
it's
to
forced.
spin.
It's forced communal because of money, but
I want to add
Di,
a
I'm
couple
sorry.
things. Oh, that's okay. I want to add a couple things to what Ron said. I love that in retrospect, that conversation should have been, you're pretty tough for a heterosexual, because that would have made logical sense. Based on everything you learned, not gay, tough, So I'm glad that occurred. But I want to go back to Ian's original point, how we got this. Ian made the assertion that a lot of comedians are very smart, and I really want to really understand what you mean by that, because in my experience, like the smart comedians, you somehow got them together noon on a Thursday. And I'm like, no, so I this is not shade, but I feel like there are many smart comedians who are trying to make it at comedy. And for example, when we do try to create art that is meant for nerds, it becomes something like Big Bang Theory, or it becomes kind of this minstrel show for nerds, or people of color who are trying to be smart. And so I think that there is something to be said about what is visible, like what is a visible comedian like. Most of those visible comedians are not smart. And then who are the comedians that are smart, that are trying to create art? Those people aren't as visible, and they're not getting as much traction. So I would kind of be interested to see. I mean, there are definitely a few, like Trevor Noah, very smart. Stephen Colbert, very smart. When Jon Stewart was on the air, very smart. So there are some people who are visible in this small corner, talking about politics, talking about society. But I don't see a lot of comedians who have broke through the mainstream who want to lure people in with their OnlyFans and teach them about math and science. So I would really like to know more about this, Ian. Like, what do you think makes the comedians that you are seeing smart or not smart? Because I find that comedians are very good at rhetoric, and they're good at making an argument that they haven't fully thought through. And so, yes. Like, when you think of, like, you know, people at the you know, who are having these issues come up, they have spent their lifetime creating this fan base on Twitter or whatever through their podcast, where they make these funny assertions like, there's only 2 genders, man, don't you know? Like, you know, if I saw one that was different, I wouldn't fuck them. And then everyone laughs because it's funny to that demographic, but they haven't done any critical thinking. Well, no, I think partly what I'm saying is I think we're thinking about 2 different things. When I'm talking about comics, I've been a comic for 30 years. I'm talking about comedians, not famous people. Yeah. So I'm not always talking, but again, I know people that you can be. We have to also remember that intelligence and education are 2 completely different things. I know MD doctors that are dumb as shit. Sure. I know people who quit high school at 10th grade who have 170 IQs. So we have to remember that there are people who can process and do all this stuff that are uneducated and sometimes ignorant. But when you sit and talk to them, you go, oh, this person really knows, they're intelligent, they're just uneducated. And sometimes that's a really bad combination. But also, like, the people I've worked with in my life on the road, like, I've had conversations. And, you know, Dave Chappelle I've had many conversations with Dave Chappelle. He's a very smart guy. We may not always agree with the stuff, and sometimes he does some ignorant stuff. He's smart. Louis C.K., I definitely don't agree with a lot of stuff with Louis C.K. He is a smart guy. Todd Barry, to me, that guy, first off, his comedy is brilliant. Love him so much. So great. You know, but a lot of, like, my friend Ty Barnett, Leighann, you guys all here, Jason Wrestler, there's just so many people I've known throughout the years that I sit and talk to or go on the road with. And I'm like, these people are all thinkers. And some of them don't. I've seen people's evolution too, where I'm on the road with them 20 years ago, and we're having these conversations, and I'm thinking to myself, how does this person have this belief or this belief system when they seem so together? And then 10 years later, the conversation is, yeah, I was wrong about a lot of stuff. Interesting. And I'm like, I knew they had it, but they didn't know they had it. And a lot of it was, again, education or upbringing, or, you know, where they grew up. And it's like, and I just think that there's a process that a lot of comics, and yeah, there's not a lot. I mean, it's not all of them, for sure. There's a lot of really bad, especially nowadays, I feel, because of bro culture, if you will. There are a lot of people who just go up and their whole thing is to shock, like Ron said, or say dumb stuff, or it's just this kind of like, you know, just easy, you know. And I would say that crosses genders, much to my shock and awe. Like, I remember doing a show several years ago. It was an all-women show. I was invited to do it. I said, sure. I go, and I'm sitting there, and I'm just, like my head is tilting so badly. You know, I'm afraid it's going to fall off, and I'm watching these young ladies, and I'm like, is this what we doing with our freedom? Like, this, none of this was funny. And then another comic I know, she came in and she sat there, and her head is starting to tilt. Like, and I turned to her and I'm like, well, when is class making a comeback? She goes, I don't know, maybe when intelligence does. I just couldn't believe what was passing for comedy, which is different than you taking your lumps and growing and trying to figure out. I felt like some of these young ladies on stage were emulating someone famous. Right. And they thought all they had to do was shock and talk about their nethers, and then that was comedy. And it was like,
which is fine if you want to do it, but also have some other stuff.
Well, if you're gonna do it, listen, I know some of the dirtiest chicks in the game. Yeah, funny as hell. You can talk about your nethers. You better be funny. But I can't. I can't see you on stage for the first 3 minutes that I'm meeting you, and I know more about your vagina than your OBGYN. That's not funny to me.
And I don't want to throw shade on anybody either. But look at, to me, like you're saying, Sarah Silverman, very smart, very funny in my opinion, and does some dirty ass shit.
Yes, but see, that's what I'm talking about.
Wanda Sykes.
Oh.
Funny,
Yes.
smart. But you see the people that are trying to emulate them, and all they see, like when I was a kid growing up, to me, Richard Pryor was, I mean, still Richard Pryor, I think is the greatest comic of all time. But and I love Carlin and there, but Richard Pryor, I watch and I go, and I would see young black comics coming up, especially in the 90s, and they would be like, oh, Richard Pryor, and I get up on, and I watch them up on stage, and all they're doing is like, black people are different than white people. And I'm like, you never watched Richard Pryor. If you think that's what Richard Pryor did, that was a tiny fraction of what Richard Pryor did, and he did it in the 70s. Richard Pryor was a genius wordsmith. He told stories like nobody, personal stories, and they were heartfelt, and he was just a genius of a man talking about everyday life. And it's like, yeah, he made fun of some white people. Yeah, he did the thing like brothers are different than, of course he did a little bit of that. But that wasn't what encompassed Richard Pryor. So when I watch the emulators of Richard Pryor, and I'm like, you don't get what made Richard Pryor funny. And I feel like a lot of the people you're talking about, they're emulating something and they only see that they watch The Simpsons and they only get that Homer's dumb. You know what I mean? They don't get all the references to movies and things and and the societal digs. They just get Homer's dumb. Like, well, and they go, oh, he's funny. He fell down the stairs.
But let's talk about the nature of let's talk about what a joke is. And then the nature of what intelligence is. Okay, when it comes down to it, a joke is taking a subject, then putting a twist on it that's surprising, but that's not so surprising that it isn't related to what you just said. Because if it's too surprising, it doesn't work. If it's not surprising enough, it doesn't work, right? So you have to find a balance between taking a regular subject and twisting it so that people are surprised and laugh, right? Okay, so that's the basic idea of a joke. And so the nature of intelligence is to be able to relate to people and then and to whatever subject matter you're doing, right? And then take that subject matter, twist it a little bit, think about it, and make it grow. And I think that that's what good comedy is, but bad comedy is that too, and even comedy that I don't personally like, but other people like, is still that sort of intelligence. So like I have a friend, I'm not going to use his name because that's very impolite, who I do not think is funny. But I can tell you for sure that I've never seen him have a bad set. I've been on the road with this guy 70, 80, 90 times. That guy is crushed every single time I've seen him get on stage. I do not think he's funny. I haven't laughed at one single joke he's ever done. But it would be stupid to ignore the empirical science and data that guy's funny. And so it's like comedy's so subjective. What Ian likes is not going to be the same as what I like, what you like, etc. And like okay, did you guys ever see Ace Ventura 2?
I love that it's so specific, not one but two.
Well, specifically because there's this part where there's the Monopoly looking guy, and I think he's wearing fur or something like that, and then he just knocks out it makes me laugh right now. It is stupid. It is not funny. I know it shouldn't be funny, but he knocks out the Monopoly guy and then starts wearing him like he's a fur. And then when he puts Brussels sprouts in his teeth and it's like, that's something in my teeth, I laugh right now. That is funny to me. That's not a smart joke. There's nothing intelligent about, wow, I have something in my teeth, obviously, and I'm saying it's in my teeth. Like, I understand that is not the most brilliant of jokes. Fart jokes make me laugh. I'm sorry, they do. But that's what's so interesting about comedy is that there's such a vast variety to be liked, and what makes other people laugh is not the same, and that's wonderful. Like I've looked at all of your guys' stuff.
Oh no,
you're all funny. You're hilarious, and you're all hilarious in different ways. Ian, as one-liners and his flow to his comedy is like well put together and perfect and smart and fun to listen to. Your storytelling is like warming while also being hilarious, and that's the same with you. Like you guys have these specific styles that are wonderful but totally different and also all pretty smart, and that's that is amazing thing in the geek culture as well. One of my favorite things about my podcast is that when someone comes and talks about what would seem like not that interesting a character, like someone came and talked about Windy Darling from Peter Pan, and it was because of her experience with having to take care of men her whole life.
Ooh.
Which you wouldn't think of when you think about that. Maybe you would think on going the adventure and flying and, or that. But that's not what she had to think about. She had to think about how she had to constantly take care of take care of men who were boys. And so, everybody has this different outlook on things. And that's one of my favorite things about geek culture and comedy in general is when it comes together, it's like this beautiful miasma of different personalities and subjects that's just filled with joy.
So,
well, I think I was just going to say that's what for me was so beautiful about Dragoncon. The first time I went and every time I go, I get to do jokes that mainstream people are not going to get.
Yep.
And to be embraced specifically for that. No, we love that you're smart. We love that you're nerdy. You don't have to hide that. Can we have more, please? And it's like, what? So it's like you walk into such a wonderful, receptive environment. And like, oh, is this what love is like?
It's funny because you guys all know, at least those who've worked with me know. I try to do all my comedy regardless of where I'm at. I'm trying to do. I don't care if I'm in. I try to do what I do everywhere.
Yeah.
It doesn't always work the way I would like it to, but I do my best, and I don't give a crap if the audience at the the Chuckle Hut in wherever doesn't get it. I really don't care. But that's why when I go to Dragoncon and I do these shows, I try to do the extra nerdy stuff, or at least I know that I can just say something, and again, whether it's a bad pun or a story that is 5 minutes just to get to one punchline that I really wanted to say that I can't say anywhere else. I always love that. I wanted to actually get into people. We got to go pretty soon, but I wanted to get a joke. I always, man knows that it's a stupid joke, but I love doing it because everybody at DragonCon goes, oh yeah. I always open with, when I go to DragonCon, I always say, people who don't live in the nerd culture don't understand that nerds party just as much. Sure, it's different. There's always, there's costumes involved, and but I go, but if you don't believe me, I always say this. Don't believe me. You go to a DragonCon or a Comic-Con and wait till it's 4 a.m. and there's a DJ and there's 4,000 people in a room and everyone's drunk, and I go, you will see a overweight 50-year-old Harry Potter out on the dance floor just shaking his ass burgers, and. And every time I say that, everyone in the room goes, yeah, that's me. And they laugh and they go, yeah, I'm probably a little bit on it. But it's hilarious. And I'll go more and more into the joke. But every time I open with that joke, just that little bit of a pun, it always gets a laugh at the DragonCon, because everyone laughs because they know it's them, but they all look around and they realize that half the people in the audience are in some ridiculously elaborate costume that they spent $30,000 and they started the end of last year creating, and they're there at a comedy show at DragonCon in this crazy outfit that they made, and they're like, yeah, I'm drunk and I'm going to a DJ later on. It's like, yeah, this is we can still party, we can still have a good time here. But I always like to open with that. What are jokes? What's your Leighann is masterful at doing her set around DragonCon. You always have like 5 or 10 minutes of just talking about the con and what you saw.
Yeah, I know, right? Because there's so much to see, and I feel when I talk about what I've seen, or that they feel seen. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. And they're not seen to be mocked. They're seen to be appreciated.
Right.
Like one of my favorite jokes that only works there, and this was a true story. Somebody tweeted me and they asked me, they said, Leighann, on a scale of 1 to 10, how much of a nerd are you? And I said 42.
Nice.
Thank you. Regular audience, crickets. Dragoncon. I remember. I think it was last year. I asked him a question. I said I'd gone to see Aquaman, and I'm like, I don't know, you guys. I don't know if this is true. I'm gonna ask you guys because y'all are nerds. Y'all know more than me. Somebody told me that Aquaman had a plot. Is that true? Which the Marvel people love, and the DC people grudgingly go, yeah, we get it.
That's funny.
Yeah, so that's what I mean about getting to I guess what you mean about crafting my jokes around Dragoncon. And one real specific, I saw a lady, her cosplay, and this is always for Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy fans. All she had was on her shoulder was a bowl of petunias and a little sign that said, "Oh no, not again," which is really, really, really specific from the book. You know, you're not going to hear this at the Chuckle Hut. You're just not. But I love that I can show them. That I see them and I love them, and I'm making jokes my comedy's not mean. My comedy is inclusive, if I can say that, Well,
I want to go through. Let's go through and just really quick tell people where they can find you, and hopefully, I don't know if there'll be 70,000 people watching, but Dragoncon is pretty big, and hopefully, if you guys want to,
I'm gonna put your mic on.
Maybe we can do the show in 2021 when it's all back to normal. We could do this show. Maybe we could bring some guests and do this show live in Dragoncon next year. And I know for a fact Leighann and I will be there if all goes well. So go through.
Of course you will be. Way to flex on us. Yeah, of course we'll be there. You guys could be our guests.
Actually, we probably shouldn't bring guests because then they'll replace. Those people you brought? Yeah. We're going to have them do it next year.
Right. Yeah, that's how I got there. I replaced somebody. I'm kidding. I have no idea.
I'll go really quickly because I have to get going. But I'm Daya Lakshminarayanan, and follow me at Dayalive, DHAYALIVE, or go to my website where my calendar is there. It's dayacomedy.com. So please follow me. I like nerds. Someone just sent me a message and they gave me a written transcript of my whole set when they were listening to it. Those are the kinds of fans I get. So I welcome you, nerds. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you for joining us, Di. I really appreciate it.
No problem. I have to run. I'm so sorry.
Good.
You're hilarious.
Thank you. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed spending time with all of you. I love nerds. I heart all of you.
Thanks, Daya.
Ron, where can they find you?
You could look me up Nerd Goat Podcast. It's at Ron Swallow. If you put Ron Swallow into anything, that fantastic name that I have, you will find me. And check out Reboot It on YouTube. I do it with Billy Business, Ed Greer, and our producer Bill, where we basically take movies that shouldn't be rebooted and we reboot them. And we tell you how we would do it and who we would cast and who we would have direct it and et cetera, et cetera. Nice. Nerd Goat Podcast, you know about it. Check it out. We talk about people's favorite fictional character of all time.
Very nice. Leighann, how about you? What you got going on?
Oh, wow. What do I have a lot going on, but I will say people can find me. The portal to me is veryfunnylady.com. I am the new co-host for Point of Inquiry, and that's sort of the Center for Inquiry. I am also now their new host for their online series called Skeptical Inquirer Presents, where we're actually talking a lot about conspiracy theories and COVID conspiracy theories and just really trying to shed light on the madness that's going on right now. And I'm very proud of a show that I co-host on Saturday mornings, Eastern Standard Time, 11 a.m., which is it's called Sci-Fi Saturday, where we just seriously just nerd out and just talk about Star Trek and Star Wars and Dune and anything that sort of strikes our fancy, but we are very Star Trek heavy. And I think the Dragoncon audience would definitely appreciate that. It's every morning, every Saturday morning, Sci-Fi Saturday, 11 a.m. You can find out more at veryfunnylady.com.
And I'm Ian Harris. You can find me on anything that has @comediocre. I love portmanteau, so it's comedy and mediocre smushed together. And my website is skepticcomedian.com. And watch if you like the kind of stand-up comedy. I have two specials. One is called Critical End Thinking. The other one is called Extraordinary. They're both on iTunes and I believe Amazon Prime still, maybe Hulu. They're out there. So please give them a like. And if you like it, please put a nice comment. And if you don't like it, nobody cares about your opinion.
Look, I went to one live and enjoyed it, and I've watched the other one. You guys should check them both out. They're great. You will have a fun time. You will laugh. You will learn. You will think they're good albums.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate that. And Dragoncon, we will see you next year, hopefully, if all goes well. I don't need to knock on wood because I'm not superstitious, but let's pretend I am. We'll see you all next year. The Science and Fiction Comedy Show with Leighann Lord and Ian Harris, hopefully next year at Dragoncon in the main ballroom. Sponsored by Skeptrack. Thank you, Derek. And Science Track. Thank you, Stephen. And yeah, we'll see you all next time.
Next time. Bye, Dragoncon.
Oh, they're so wonderful. They're so wonderful. We like big nerds and we cannot lie. So, so thank you very much for joining us for Science and Fiction. Next up, we have Richard Saunders at 7:30 to look at some of the notable tests of paranormal powers over the years and what someone should expect when trying for the thousands of dollars of prize money that is on offer. We appreciate your joining us on the live streaming Skeptrack for Dragoncon 2020. These videos will also be available on Skeptrack.com. Thank you to Calico Cove Studios for helping us with these video productions. They are spectacular as usual. I'm Dr. Angie. We'll see you later.
As fun as all this streaming content is, we sincerely cannot wait to see you all in person again next year. Remember to stay healthy and safe until then. Wear a mask when interacting with other people out in the real world. Want more Skeptrack? Get more than 10 years of Skeptics Track programming at our video archive. video.skeptrack.org